day to all of you, and this is the discussion of the idea page today, right? So we are taking one article from the idea page. Why? Because it is the Monday idea, and the topic that we are taking today is budget's political priorities. Budget, for the previous week, you have been reading a lot on budget. If you have been reading what I'm suggested also, so I assume कि आप लोग पढ़ रहे हैं वही जो आपको पॉइंट आउट किया जा रहा है कि ठीक है ये वाली चीजें आप पढ़ लो तो यू विल गेट अकस्टम टू ऑल दिस. तो बजट के बारे में अगर तुमने पढ़ा होगा तो फिर अब हम उसे एनालाइज करें तो यू विल गेट मेनी आर्टिकल्स विच आर नाउ एनालाइजिंग द बजट, right? And similarly you will get many articles now in this week which will be analyzing the action of the MPC, that is monetary policy, right? तो उसमें जो उन्होंने कहा था, we had taken this I think so Friday or Saturday हमने लिया है इस पे आर्टिकल. उसमें भी एनालिसिस वाले आर्टिकल बहुत सारे मिलेंगे तुम्हें. तो द पॉइंट इज that you read those articles so that you can understand what the implications of that action of the RBI would be, what it assumed, and what will be the consequences or what the scenario now is. ठीक है, अभी हम बजट की बात करते हैं. चलो. Union budget 25-26 comes at a time when there are clear signs of the economy slowing down. ये बड़ा एक स्टेटमेंट जैसे इसने बोल दिया कि इकोनॉमी में स्लो डाउन तो चल रहा है. बढ़िया बात है. अब बजट उसी टाइम पे है, टाइमिंग भी देखो. Unlike earlier, this slowdown is finally being acknowledged by the government. That means earlier the government did not acknowledge कि हाँ स्लो डाउन चल रहा है. पहले बोलते रहे कि एस्टिमेट कि हाँ बढ़िया चलेगा, लेकिन अभी उन्होंने एक्नॉलेज किया है कि हाँ स्लो डाउन है. It is acknowledged by the government. Economic survey presented a day earlier was clear in its assessment of the challenges facing the Indian economy. It was clear. So if it is acknowledged earlier, it presented a day earlier was clear in its assessment. हो गई वापस से वही बात उन्होंने बोल दी है. So the most important being the slowdown driven by stagnant or declining incomes. Now this is the reason why the slowdown is, and this gives you the point that there is a slowdown. Additional point that yes, the government has acknowledged that there is a slowdown, and the reason for it is stagnant or declining incomes. The survey also presented evidence that confirmed the decline in the incomes of the self-employed, while for wage workers it is now almost a decade of stagnant real wages. So this point driven by stagnant, तो ये रहा इसी से continued. What was expected from the budget was some ideas to revive the economy based on this reality. ये रहा author की point कि अगर इतने सालों से इतने टाइम से स्लो डाउन चल रहा है, जो अब जाके गवर्नमेंट ने एक्नॉलेज किया है कि हाँ स्लो डाउन है, उसका रीजन डिक्लाइनिंग इनकम एंड रियल वेजेस एंड स्टैग्नेंट इनकम्स. ठीक है. Now if all this has been acknowledged, then according to the author the government should have come up with something that is reviving the economy, right? So there was some ideas to revive. It was expected कि हम revive कैसे करेंगे इकोनॉमी को, ये बात करनी है, ये बात होनी चाहिए थी. Now while the budget did not have any new ideas to do so, its prescriptions are based on political pragmatism rather than economic reality. Again this was the point of the author कि इन्होंने जो किया बजट में, जो भी स्टेप्स लिए, जो कुछ भी कहा है, that is not according to the economic reality of the times today. It is about being very लाइक प्रैक्टिकल, यू कैन से प्रैग्मेटिज्म उन्होंने फॉलो किया है, ये बात है. पॉलिटिकल प्रैग्मेटिज्म फॉलो किया है, उन्होंने इकोनॉमिक रियलिटी को ध्यान से नहीं देखा है. नाउ द इलेक्शंस इन दिल्ली एंड बिहार along with the need to satisfy the core voters of the ruling dispensation, the middle class, they have taken precedence over the economic reality. Now this part of the sentence was again telling you about this economic reality that had been ignored over पॉलिटिकल pragmatism. और ये उसका रीजन कि क्यों उन्होंने ऐसा किया. तो इकोनॉमी, दे हैव टेकन प्रेसिडेंस ओवर द इकोनॉमिक रियलिटी, अगेन द सेम थिंग, political pragmatism rather than economic reality. That means they have taken precedence over the economic reality of an economy in distress, primarily in rural areas and in agriculture. Distress कहाँ पे है? रूरल एरिया और एग्रीकल्चर में. ठीक है. तो अब इन्होंने क्या बोल दिया है? स्लोइंग डाउन ऑफ द इकोनॉमी है, हाँ. गवर्नमेंट हैज एक्सेप्टेड, एक्नॉलेज्ड इट, हाँ. रीजन स्टैग्नेंट और पुअर, क्या था, स्टैग्नेंट और डिक्लाइनिंग इनकम्स। या तो स्टैग्नेंट इज रुका हुआ है, या तो डिक्लाइन हो रही है, मतलब इंक्रीज नहीं है वहां पे इनकम में। ये ऐसा प्रॉब्लम है तो फिर इकोनॉमिक स्लो डाउन होगा ही। से व्हाई दैट डे आई एक्सप्लेन्ड इट टू यू अबाउट द कंजम्पशन, द परचेसिंग पावर ऑफ द पीपल। ठीक है। So, then now comes the author's point that what was expected, कि अगर ऐसा है तो कुछ रिवाइव करने के लिए, इकोनॉमी को रिवाइव करने के लिए कुछ आइडियाज होने चाहिए। बट नाउ द ऑथर इज डिसहार्टेंड कि ऐसा कुछ भी नया न्यू आइडियाज तो आई नहीं थी। पर उन्होंने क्या किया है, नाउ द ऑथर्स टेक, दे हैव फोकस मोर ऑन द पॉलिटिकल pragmatism rather than on the economic reality. Economic reality तो ये है declining and stagnant incomes and the declining economic growth. But this budget has not kept these things in mind, and they have worked according to the political pragmatism. Why? क्योंकि इसका एक political angle था about the elections point. Now, given the seriousness of the economic slowdown, what was needed was an increase in public expenditure to boost aggregate demand. Right? What was needed? The expected उन्होंने पहले कहा था, और उन्होंने अब कहा है कि देखो this is what is needed also. So the nominal GDP growth is likely to be 10.1% with inflation staying in the 4 to 5% range. The growth of budgeted expenditure at 10.3% is lower than the expected nominal GDP growth. GDP growth itna hoga और ये इतना होगा, but then the main point of the author is that what was needed is this, what was expected was in the previous sentence, but that means nothing of that sort has actually happened in the budget. So excluding the interest payment, which are committed expenditure, growth in government spending is only 5.9%. इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट रहेंगे, कमिटेड एक्सपेंडिचर, मतलब ये इतना खर्चा तो उन्हें करना ही पड़ेगा, क्योंकि उन्होंने अगर लोन कहीं से ले रखा है, किसी भी सपोज एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक से लिया है, वर्ल्ड बैंक से लिया है, जो भी लिया है, तो वो तो पेमेंट उन्हें करना ही पड़ेगा. Now, if you exclude this payment, why? Because this is something that is committed. You have committed it, so you have to pay that. So, right? So that is called committed expenditure. Growth in government spending is only 5.9%, the same as last year. On the other hand, Centre's gross as well as net tax revenue is projected to increase at 10.9% in nominal terms. Nominal terms मतलब सिर्फ नाम मात्र के ऐसा in name. This is despite the massive rupees 1 lakh crore tax giveaway to the middle class. Clearly, this was a giveaway means ठीक है, अभी इतना इतना करोड़ 1 लाख करोड़ इनका माफ हो जाएगा, कम हो जाएगा ना. Why? Because of the middle class benefiting. So clearly, far from being an expansionary budget, this is a conservative budget at a time when the government was expected to step up and expand fiscal spending to increase. Again, see, where the government was expected to step up and expand the spending, ये expand करना था, spending increase करनी थी ताकि incomes increase हो जाएं. ठीक है, they had to increase the spending, they had to increase the real income of the people so that there would be more purchasing power as liquidity in the market. वो आ जाता rolling में वापस पैसा. ये expected था अभी भी. What was needed is an increase in the public expenditure. This point has been reiterated here in the end of the paragraph also. While this has allowed the center to reduce its fiscal deficit for next year to 4.4%, it has been achieved by expenditure cuts in real terms of programs and ministries that needed the fiscal expenditure. मतलब this has allowed the center to reduce its fiscal deficit, मतलब वो कम कर लेगी. Whatever he was given here, fiscal spending to increase income tax ऐसा होगा, पर अगर spending नहीं होती है ज़्यादा, तो fiscal deficit उनका कम हो जाएगा. Right? So it has been achieved by expenditure cuts in real terms for programs and ministries that needed the fiscal expenditure. Now see what is going on. What was expected, what was needed was the government should come up with more expenditure. पर अगर expenditure होता तो fiscal deficit और बढ़ जाता. ठीक है, liquidity आ जाती, कुछ भी होता, लेकिन expenditure बढ़ जाता, deficit भी बढ़ जाता. अब उन्होंने fiscal expenditure को कम रखा है. It was expected कि वो ज्यादा कर लेते, increase कर लेते, लेकिन वो कम रखा है. अब कम रखा है तो fiscal deficit भी उनका कम हो जाएगा, right? But then on the other hand, now see, this becomes like a paradoxical statement only, no? Right? What was required now was They had to spend. They needed that fiscal expenditure, but what did they get? Expenditure cuts. Now, the budget estimates also suggest that in many of the important ministries, revised expenditure has been lower than what was budgeted last year. तो सोचो मिनिस्ट्रीज को उतना पैसा नहीं मिल रहा है, उनके बजट में कम हुआ है, ठीक है, जबकि उन्हें अभी ज्यादा खर्चा करने के लिए देना था. This has been a general trend for some time now with large allocations during the budget announcements but lower actual expenditure. तो allocations ज़्यादा, actual expenditure कम, ऐसा कुछ trend चल रहा है. Take the case of expenditure on rural development. Take the case of means it's coming up with an example. तो आपके पास रीजनिंग भी होती जा रही है, यहाँ से पॉइंट भी आता गया है. दिस बिकम्स योर पॉइंट कि एक्सपेंडिचर कट हो रहा है, ठीक है, जो कि नहीं होना चाहिए था, एक्सपेंडिचर इनको बढ़ा के देना था. Now take the case of expenditure on rural development. The revised estimates for the Ministry of Rural Development are lower by rupees 3654 crore compared to the budgeted estimates. In the case of the Ministry of Labour and Employment, the revised estimates are lower by rupees 4224 crore, given the fact that rural areas have been in distress for almost a decade. ठीक है, तो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ लेबर एंड एम्प्लॉयमेंट है और ये मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रूरल डेवलपमेंट है, तो इनके पास जितना बजट होता था उससे कितना कम हुआ है ये डेटा दिया, पर एटलीस्ट कम हुआ है. एंड दिस इज द ह्यूज वन. Almost a decade and unemployment has emerged as the most pressing problem. Underspending on crucial programs and ministries is a cause of worry. अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट है, अंडरस्पेंडिंग है, मतलब जितना इनको खर्चे के लिए होना चाहिए था उतना है नहीं. The case of Manrega, which has been a lifeline for many struggling with stagnant wages and lack of productive employment, is similar. That means this is the third, this is the second, and this becomes the first example. The complete paragraph is giving you examples, but of what? That there has been a cut in the expenditure, the budget allocated to them, to these ministries, wherein what was required or what should have been done was increasing their expenditure. But there have been expenditure cuts in the budget also. ये इतना cut हुआ है, right? The budgeted expenditure for Manrega remains 86,000 crores, the same as last year despite inflation and wages under the scheme having gone up. ठीक है, तो अगर उन्होंने स्टैग्नेंट रखा उतना ही करोड़ आपको मिलेगा, बजट में एलोकेशन इतना हुआ है, पर यहाँ से उनका एक्सपेंडिचर बढ़ गया. क्यों? क्योंकि नॉमिनल वेजेस जो है वो इंक्रीज हो गए अंडर द मनरेगा स्कीम, जो भी उनके बेसिक वेजेस थे वो इंक्रीज हो गए. दूसरा, इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ गया है, तो इनका बजट एलोकेशन भी बढ़ जाना चाहिए था. अगर स्टेबल रहा है, दैट मीन्स देयर हैज बीन अ कट इन द बजट एलोकेटेड. व्हाई? बिकॉज कवर अप हो जाएगा वहां से जो एक्स्ट्रा खर्चा यहाँ हो रहा है. तो एब्सोल्यूट नंबर्स में भले नंबर सेम है आपके पास बजट में, right? But literally, you will be getting or benefiting less now. Why? Because of the inflation, it has not been covered, and because of the increase in the real wages, जो कि दिए हैं मनरेगा ने, लेकिन इधर बजट में उसका कवर नहीं हुआ है. The other crisis-ridden sector that was talked about at great length and as the first priority is agriculture. ठीक है, उसे रूरल डेवलपमेंट एंड एग्रीकल्चर दो चीजें बोली थी थर्ड पैराग्राफ में. So even in agriculture, there is now enough evidence to suggest that incomes have been stagnant or in decline. ये वो first paragraph से बोल रहा है कि reason क्या है इस problem का, stagnant or declining incomes, and this is something that he has been giving from the very first paragraph. So you can understand how to come to the main idea also. For agriculture, the nominal expenditure is in fact lower than the revised estimates of last year. The budgeted expenditure is rupees 12729 crore as against the revised estimate of rupees this much of last year. The revised estimates भी इतने ही है. तो इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि एग्रीकल्चर में भी कुछ फाइन डिफरेंस है नहीं. ठीक है, तो मेन आइडियाज हमारे पास वही आ जाती हैं. लेट अस सी नाउ. So as we said the previously, it was clear in his assessment of the challenges facing the Indian economy, right? ये तो first point थी कि ये clear तो थे. Now simultaneously I will be giving you the terminology or the word which you have to read now. ठीक है, एकदम अभी नहीं करेंगे क्योंकि ये बजट से रिलेटेड वर्ड्स हैं. ये कहीं ना कहीं तुमने करे भी होंगे, डिस्कस भी किए होंगे, लेकिन ये वर्ड्स तुम लिख के रखना so that you are able to read on it later on, right? At least for this week now you have to start reading, right? So this was the first point. Then what was expected from the budget was some ideas to revive the economy, right? This way. Now, even if you understand how to revive the economy, तो हमारे पास बहुत सारे steps आ जाएंगे थे. What can the RBI do to revive the economy? इस तरीके से अगर आपने सोचना समझना शुरू किया तो आपको वो सारे inflationary control के measures आ जाएंगे समझ में. या डिफ्लेशन रिसेशन के मेजर्स कैसे होते हैं, मतलब रिसेशन को कैसे हैंडल करना है, इन्फ्लेशन को कैसे हैंडल करना है, ये सब हम बैंकिंग में करते हैं. ठीक है, अब हम इसमें करेंगे पॉलिटिकल प्रेगमेटिज्म हो गया, इकोनॉमिक रियलिटी हो गया. एंड व्हाट दे हैव डन इज दे हैव टेकन दिस प्रेसिडेंस over the economic reality of the economy in distress. So we have the first idea one, that the government has acknowledged that there is a decline, but what was expected, that it should have come up with something better, new ideas to revive the economy, but it has put political pragmatism over economic reality in its budget. First line, first paragraph, one line, you can easily write the main idea here. Right. Now, this is what was needed is an increase in public expenditure to boost the aggregate demand. Okay. Now, as I said, I'll be giving you the terms here only. Vocabulary का section मैंने अलग नहीं लिया है अभी, because this was a lengthy one. तो तुम इसी में से समझ सकते हो. I'll be giving you that. One, public expenditure लिख लेना तुम. You need to read on this. Second, aggregate demand. What is aggregate demand, ये लिखना. And GDP growth. GDP पे हमने पढ़ना भी शुरू कर लिया था. I think so 10 days back only I gave you, you need to read on the GDP. ठीक है, उसके पहले I had given you the CPI and WPI, आप पढ़ लेना उसमें. So GDP growth हो गया. Interest payments is the committed expenditure, growth in government spending. ठीक है. अब gross and net tax, ये most of the people would know this, right? But still you write what all is included in the gross tax revenue and how the net tax revenue is calculated. ठीक है, 1 2 3 4 5 ये आप कर सकते हैं. मेन आइडिया तो हमारे पास अभी भी यही है. पब्लिक एक्सपेंडिचर होना चाहिए था, ज्यादा इंक्रीज होना चाहिए था, बट इट इज नॉट डूइंग इट. सो इट इज अ कंजर्वेटिव बजट. एक्सपेंशनरी होना चाहिए था, एक्सपैंड होना था, लेकिन कंजर्वेटरी हो गया है. दिस इज व्हाट द वर्डिंग्स आर. देन ministries have been getting lower than the budget that they got last year. This becomes your third point. So, or you can write this expenditure cuts for ministries that needed the fiscal expenditure. ये भी आप लिख सकते हो. Expenditure cut मिला है जबकि उनको expansionary measures use करने थे. ठीक है, देखो वापस से वही बातें बोलेंगे वो. Therefore, that is how the main idea is detected also, right? Then these three, they become the examples. Examples of what? Of the most pressing problems. Then when you talk about this, Manrega, you can actually read a little on Manrega also, right? उसे पढ़ लेना. उसके कुछ कुछ पॉइंटर्स होते हैं जो तुम्हें जीके में भी काम आ जाएंगे कि what all is included, what is the basic wages, level of wages there, and how many days do they need to provide this employment and all, who is eligible for this employment. तो बहुत सारी चीजें तुम्हें मिल जाएंगी छोटी छोटी जो कहीं ना कहीं आगे काम भी आएंगी. So you read a little on this. So incomes have been stagnant. This was from the very first line also. तो यही की यही बात रिपीट भी की गई है. ठीक है, अब बजटेड एक्सपेंडिचर कितना होता है, मतलब उनको जितना दिया गया था. So the main idea, what union budget should have focused on instead of tax cuts for middle class. ये दिया है कि what it should have done, what was needed, what was expected, means what it should have done, implied that this none of this happened. ये समझ में आ जाता है, implied हो या inferred हो. So given the seriousness of the economic slowdown, अब देखो ये वाला sentence, what was needed was increase in the public expenditure to boost the aggregate demand. So ये दोनों words हमने लिख रखे हैं, public expenditure में क्या क्या include होता है, क्या क्या होता है, और aggregate demand में क्या क्या होता है, ये पूरा अच्छे से पढ़ लेना, right? So more to read में I have given you only 2 articles today. So a different way forward, नहीं 3 articles हैं. A different way forward from the same newspaper. The Delhi Quake is the first editorial. This is about the election results of the Delhi. तो Delhi Quake आ गया यहाँ पर. ये metaphorical use है इसका, earthquake का. An MPC rate cut could have waited for a clearer outlook. अब ये उस दिन जो हमने डिस्कस किया था, मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कमेटी ने क्या किया है, 25 basis points रेट कट किया है, right? Now this is from the Mint, and this is another view, another perspective of a journalist on the rate cut made by the RBI, MPC, right? उसे ध्यान से पढ़ना. That article is actually very beautifully written also, and if required, if needed, no, if needed, required, nahi. If possible, then I'll take it further in some or the other session. अभी किसी न किसी में मैं लेना चाहूंगी, वो ले भी सकती हूँ, तो वो देखते हैं. But otherwise, at least go through it. It is a very beautifully written article. ठीक है, ये 3 तो तुम पढ़ ही लेना. So that's all for today, and thank you, and stay logical, stay positive, be logical, and be positive always with Vidya, of course. See you soon.